All right. If this will work, then we will get this going here. So, today we are going to talk about writing body paragraphs. Now, we talked about this a few weeks ago. This is kind of going into a little bit more detail. And then on Thursday, we're going to talk about focusing on intros and conclusions. So I don't know for sure if we'll be in the classroom on Thursday. I will let you know as soon as I find out. And I don't know when that will be. So just keep an eye on D2L. That is where I will be giving you that information. So just keep an eyeball there. So writing body paragraphs. Well, first announcements. Midterm grades are coming out this week. So it's through what you did last week. And so if you'll look on D2L, I'm going to give you a grade for attendance so far, and your writing process. Well, your writing process is already on there. You can see what percentage you've got of the stuff that you were supposed to have done there. And also the quiz grades. I'll give you a midterm quiz grade where I'll just average the ones that you've done so far. So I'll put those on there this week, so you'll see those, and they will update by the end of the semester. I just want you to kind of have a idea of where you are at this point, because if you don't really like those grades, then there's a whole half of a semester to change that. So give you plenty of time to be able to do better and to come to class and do all your quizzes, etc., etc. Turning in all your rough draft, your peer review drafts, and all that kind of thing. That's going to be the main thing that's going to be leading towards those writing process grades. So if you have any questions about your grade when you get it, like I said, the attendance and the quiz grades are going to be, that's just for at midterm, so you can kind of see where you are. But those, I'll update them again at the end of the semester. Make sure that you are looking at that sample review, literature review paper. I talked about it in the last video, and I've had some people still ask me about what they're supposed to do, and I'm like, then did you watch the video? Because I went through and I explained the whole thing. It's got an outline, lays out for you exactly what you're supposed to be doing. So that particular piece, that sample paper that I wrote, is going to be on D2L in the news section. I've attached it to the news post so you can see what we're doing, and it's also under the Dropbox folder. So where you would turn it in, I've posted that sample paper there as well. So make sure that you're looking at that and you're referring to that as you go along, so that you are making sure that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing with that paper. Remember, you are comparing and contrasting sources, and you're telling me how they agree and how they disagree with each other, and that kind of thing. So just kind of talking about the sources, not the topic. You're not answering your question yet, but you're talking about what your sources are saying. Make sure you have started working on that, because we will be doing peer review next week. So you're going to be turning in your rough draft on Monday for that. And that'll be on the discussion board and in class, possibly, if we're in class. I don't know for sure what's going to happen. So changes every week. But make sure that you've started working on that, because you will be turning it in. The rough draft will be Monday, and then the final draft is going to be on Friday. So you want to make sure that you've got that going along. So back to body paragraphs. When writing, you make sure that your body paragraph should follow the roadmap that your thesis says for. So, in other words, your thesis, especially when you get to the research thesis, when you're talking about claim, because, reasons, that format, you're going to have your argument, because, and you've got the different reasons that you're going to talk about. And usually you're going to list those reasons in the order that you're going to talk about them. So, you first supporting paragraphs, we'll talk about the first reason, second, along that way. So I should be able to tell based on what you write in your thesis. It tells me what you're going to be writing about, what you're going to be doing to support your argument throughout your paper. So that's what the thesis is for. It's laying out that argument, and then the rest of the body paragraphs are there to support that argument. So selecting primary support for your thesis. Now you can't just say stuff and then you've got to, help prove it. That's what those sources are for. So the different types of support that you're going to use. We're talking about primary support. Remember, primary is first, the first-hand sources, that kind of thing. The major points you choose to expand on your thesis in body paragraphs. So You need to find primary support for each one of these reasons that you've got from your thesis. So as you go through your body paragraphs, all your body paragraphs should be relevant to the thesis. In other words, they are supporting what you say in that thesis. I know as well as, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, where I go off on tangents, and it's easy to do. But make sure that you are not losing focus when you're writing there, that all your supporting paragraphs are relating directly back to that thesis. That's going to be the really important thing to do there. Some of these topics, you are very emotional about it, or you find a lot of information and you want to put everything in there, but you've got to remember that you have to stay focused around that thesis. So make sure that all the support you're using is directly connecting back to that thesis. And then be specific. So you want to have the main points that you make about your thesis and your examples to be as specific as possible. So your thesis is actually going to be fairly general. You're just going to give a few reasons why, kind of overall reasons, and then once you get to your body paragraphs, that's where you're going to start finding specific examples that prove that general reason that you've got in your thesis statement. So general examples, it says while they convey the necessary information, are not nearly as compelling or useful in writing because they are too obvious and typical. And I find a lot of students don't do this. They aren't specific. They'll say, there are instances when such and such happened, but then they don't give me an example. And it's hard to prove your point when you just say, yeah, it happens. It's happened a lot. And then, but where? How? Show me. Tell me exactly what you're talking about. Use one example. Somebody was writing about social media one time, and they were talking about people getting in trouble or, getting made fun of. Like Kim Kardashian posted about like her birthday party, and everybody was hating on her because she was gathering during COVID and that kind of stuff. But they didn't use that specific example. They just said there are users or famous influencers who have, had this happen to them. Take it a step further. Tell me who. Give me an example so I can go, oh, okay, now I understand. It's kind of like me writing this literature review paper. I can tell you how to do it all you want to, but it's going to help a lot of people to actually be able to see it and go, oh, that's what we're talking about. So try and be specific as possible with your examples, and be detailed. So remember that your thesis is somewhat specific, but it's not going to be super detailed. You're not going to have a 2-paragraph long thesis. So remember, it should only be one sentence. So the body paragraph is where you're going to develop that out. You're going to actually do the discussion that your thorough essay requires. So using detailed support, specific support, that shows that you have considered all the facts and chosen only the most precise details to enhance your point of view. So definitely make sure that you are finding, good details and good specific examples that you can use to support your reasons. So selecting the most effective primary supporting points. We're talking about relating back to your main idea for topic sentences. So these are some different types of support that you can use. Now, facts tend to be the best type because there's not really a way you can argue with it. If it's a fact, by definition, it's true, it's real, and using those facts can help support your stance, and it gives you that background information. Now, again, you want to, don't just plop in a fact or statistic or, a number or something like that without explaining it. You need to tell me for every outside quote, paraphrase, any kind of information from your sources, you will, first of all, put an in-text citation, of course, but I need you to tell me why it's important. So for every piece of outside information, there should be a sentence before or after it, at least one sentence before or after it, that tells me why that quote's important, why that fact's important, why did you even put it in there. And that way, like I said before in one of the videos, that your paper should be 80% your writing and 20% outside source material. So that 80% is you telling me this is an important point because, and supports the thesis because. So you go on with that critical thinking, and you don't make me as the reader do the work. You as the writer, you're the one that's doing the work. So you have to make the connection between your outside information and how it supports your thesis. So facts are usually the best just because it's a fact, It's hard to argue with a fact. Judgments are conclusions drawn from facts. So it's kind of like you're using the facts with your own critical thinking skills and you're going, oh, this is a fact, therefore, and then you give me a judgment or something like that. Now, that's going to be more credible than opinion. You can't prove an opinion, and a lot of people want to use opinions for their papers, whether it be their own opinions or through sources and that kind of stuff. But those are not going to be good sources because you want something that someone has done their research, they've made the judgments, they've got the facts, and they're doing it that way, not just saying, well, I think that it should be like this. That's why you don't want to use stuff like blogs and things like that because people are just writing their own opinions. Like if you, using a restaurant review, one person's going to think one thing and another person might think another about the same place. So you've got to think about whether they're actually based on fact or they're based on opinion, because you definitely want to stay focused around your facts and statistics and that kind of thing. Testimony could either be you interviewing someone, an expert on a situation, or it could be somebody who was actually at a situation or was at an event. That's usually pretty good source material, just, someone who was actually there or knows a lot about it, that kind of stuff, that you can use their information. An expert witness, eyewitness is somebody who's actually saw something or had direct experience with it. Expert witness is a person who has a lot of knowledge or experience. When I worked at a law firm, you could get paid a lot of money to be an expert witness. Like, say, for example, we did a lot of medical cases, and there were doctors who worked as expert witnesses. So they would charge like $300 an hour to review medical records and to give their own opinion of, this is where it went wrong. This is, everything's fine here. Who got it wrong, who got it right, to give their own expert opinion on it. And you can charge a lot of money to do that, for just reading over paperwork and going and speaking in court. So it's something that you can find that information from different expert witnesses, or you can interview them yourself. That's considered a source. If you talk to an expert witness, or an expert about a situation or a particular topic, then that's considered a reliable source. You can also use personal observation, similar to testimony, but it's talking about what has happened with you. Now, I would try to, you can include personal observation, especially if you have something that's very directly related to the topic you're talking about. But you want to make sure if you're going to go with personal observation, it needs to be a very strong support. It needs to be a very strong situation or a very strong experience. In other words, not an experience that a lot of other people have had. It needs to be something that's very personal to you. That's very unique to you. Otherwise, I would just use general testimony or observation from another person. If it's something that, it's not really unique in the sense that, your particular story is going to be that overly different than somebody else's, I would just use the outside source. But like I said, if you have a very unique experience that relates directly to the reasoning behind your thesis, then that's something you could possibly use. So, choosing supporting topic sentences, and remember we talked about topic sentences being kind of like the thesis for each body paragraph. So it states one aspect of your thesis and then expands upon it. So you take a reason from your thesis that's supporting your argument and then you expand on it. So you tell me more how it supports that thesis. So topic sentences indicate the location and main points of the basic arguments of your essay. It's always going to refer back to and support your thesis statement. You should be constantly reminding me what your thesis statement is. You would think that I would know, and I do, but that's something that makes your argument stronger when you keep going, okay, see, it supports the argument by doing this. Constantly referring back to it. Topic sentences are linked to the ideas you have introduced in your thesis, thus reminding readers what your essay is about. So again, each topic sentence in your body paragraphs is going to be kind of like its own little thesis statement. So you have to, but again, connected back to that overall thesis statement. So here's an example from the book. This particular paper's thesis statement is about J.D. Salinger, that he relied primarily on his personal life and belief system as the foundation for the themes in a majority of his works. So this person is obviously going to make a connection between J.D. Salinger's work and his personal life. So then we go on to, this is going to be one of the topic paragraphs, or one of the body paragraphs. Salinger, a World War II veteran, suffered from post-traumatic stress disorder, a disorder that influenced themes in many of his works. So you can see how there's some of the same wording here. So many of his works, majority of his works, that kind of thing. And we've got sort of generalized here, his personal life and belief system. We don't exactly know what that means, but now when we get down to this topic paragraph, this topic sentence, now we're going to look at him being a veteran and having PTSD. So that is a specific example of something from his personal life and belief system that is a foundation for the themes in his work. So you see how when you get to those different body paragraphs that it's going to expand out and it's going to give a specific example of what you're trying to say in your thesis. And then I won't read this whole thing to you, but you've got the topic sentence that says, okay, he was a World War II veteran. He suffered from PTSD, and it influenced the themes in his work. And then what do? We've got examples. So we've got different pieces from different, some of his writing pieces. Got examples from that show, okay, this is what he wrote about. This is how it was related. This is how, it makes specific examples that prove that how PTSD affected his work. So, and you don't necessarily, we'll probably do an outline when it comes to your actual research thesis. We're not going to do it for the literature review, but this is just an example. And I actually did an outline for you if you looked at the sample paper to kind of help you lay it out. This is an example of a support outline. In other words, what are the main points you're going to make? These 1, 2, 3 here are body paragraphs. So what's the main point you're going to make for each body paragraph? And then what are the supporting pieces that you're going to do? So for example, this particular thesis is unleashed dogs on city streets are a dangerous nuisance, which I agree with because that can't be good. But the first point is dogs can scare cyclists. Okay. And that's going to be the overall point that shows how they are what? A dangerous nuisance. And then we've got specific examples. Cyclists are forced to zigzag. School children can panic and run away, turn wildly on their bikes if a dog's coming after them. People at night which is not a cyclist, so I don't really know why walking and cycling. This is an example from the book. But it shows that these are specific examples of how dogs can scare cyclists. Or loose dogs are traffic hazards. And then we've got specific examples of people swerving their cars. They may run into other cars or pedestrians. And children trying to, go catch a dog out in the road could be hit by a car as well. So this is an example so you can see like the main overall points are dogs can scare cyclists, they're a traffic hazard, and they can damage gardens. And then we've got the specific examples underneath that. So that's how you can kind of lay out your support as you're writing this when you're start working on you can do it on your literature review assignment as well, but in your research essay for sure. So these are the key takeaways, kind of a review of what we just talked about, which I will let you read because we've already covered that. All right, so assignments. These are the things you should be working on. Make sure that you've started on that rough draft or the peer review draft. I feel like people got confused when I keep calling it a peer review draft, so just think of it as your rough draft that you're going to do peer review through. So you need to be turning that in. That is due next Monday to the discussion board and to the Dropbox. That is where you get your points. I have to grade it through the Dropbox. So if it's not in the Dropbox, I can't give you a grade. And then after I grade all of them, I just go through and give zeros where somebody didn't turn in paper. So you want to make sure that you put that in there. Emailing it to me does not work. I can't grade it from email. It has to be turned into the D2L Dropbox. So make sure that you turn that in by next Monday. It should be a full draft, even though it's a rough draft. It should be the right word length. It should cover all the material. And again, if you're still confused about what you need to be doing, then make sure that you review that sample paper that I've got. It's under content, under the sample papers and class handouts. It's in the Dropbox. It's attached in the news. It's all over the place. And I went over it in the last video, so if you want to look at that again, the last week's video, I kind of walk through it and show you, and there's some stuff in there that you don't need to include necessarily. It's just me laying out a roadmap for you so you can make sure that you've got everything in there that needs to be included. And then be sure that you complete your quiz this week. I'm going to be grading all of the midterm quizzes, or I'm going to record those grades, and I'm going to get all that stuff together for your midterms. And so you'll get that grade sometime this week. And again, if you have any questions about that, if you have any questions about the paper, about your midterm, about whatever it is, just let me know. We won't be in class tomorrow, but as always, I usually am there at the in my office for my office hours and during class time. So call, text, email, stop by. I will be there, and I can ask. I can help answer any of the questions that you've got. So make sure that you utilize that resource, which is me, because I'm grading your papers. So that means I know what I'm looking for. So if you have questions, just, you can email me your paper and say, hey, I'm on the right track here, that kind of thing, and make sure that you're going in the right direction so that you do well on this paper. So as always, like I said, if you've got any questions, feel free to ask. And I will see you all possibly this week, possibly next week, possibly I have no idea.